everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Is there something after that there, son?
A JD.
Yes! And you are listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. We are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And as you may have guessed from our language there and the attire that Mr. Caleb has on, he did graduate law school this week.
Dun, 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 dun. So much has happened since I've talked to you guys last time. Literally. I graduated law school. I got to walk down the aisle and got all these fancy cords and regalia, which it's really hot, so I'm not going to wear very much. But, I'm through. The adventure. I just have to pass the bar now, so it feels really good. Really good to start moving towards the next step.
Yeah, I have to say though, there's part of me that's jealous that you're able to do the bar preparation. I still go directly to Barbary. I just say because that's what everybody did. There was like a small amount of people that did Kaplan. But now Themis is a thing that just wasn't on the map when I was going to school. And I'm a little jealous of you that you get to do that virtually, but I'm also I'm sad for you and sad for people now because of the situation they're in, because the Barbary classes was some of the best times I ever had in class.
Right.
Because even though there's a lot of pressure on you and you know what's ahead, the instructors that they had were very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And it was a situation where I think it was like 2 weeks intensive. And then there's other things, there's other bar preparations that you do, but the actual Barbary course was 2 weeks intensive, and that's just like I have a fond memory of that. So,
nice.
Yeah.
So the Themis course is that you have an instructor, but it's pre-recorded, so it's not like it's live. So I'll have a little bit of that, but I'm also doing what's called the PASS program, which is a program that my law school puts on. And so it will start. It's like 4 weeks, I think, where I will actually go up to the school twice a week and sit in on classes with instructors. So I do get that real live feeling if I want to take advantage of it. And the cool thing about my law school is they do that for free, so I don't have to pay for it. I can just take advantage of it. So I'm going to get a little bit of that too, but I'm also very self-sufficient. So there's part of me that's kind of looking forward to / excited about being able to buckle down in my office and just work from home and treat it like a 9 to 5 and really get my grind on, because I study and I study well. So
Well, good luck to you with that.
But we didn't come here to talk about that.
A little bit.
Well, I mean, we did
change my prompt there to salute you there.
You did.
Yeah.
See, I can't do that till I pass the bar. I can't be an Esquire.
Yeah.
So,
unless we found out if you did graduate in North Dakota,
right? Yeah,
you can. North Dakota only has one law school.
Okay.
So if you graduate the school, you've met the requirements for what would be the equivalent of a bar passage. So,
interesting.
Yep.
So all you have to do is just take out all the other schools in Arkansas, and you don't have to do anything else.
Only one. We only got 2.
Yeah.
So.
Jersey is 3. It's there really aren't that. There's a couple of states, and you'd be surprised that there's a lot of law schools in California, but there's like a big number of them are unaccredited. So why bother? Hawaii has a surprising amount of law schools for its populace, but it's also the Hawaiian bar. They don't want outsiders.
Yeah.
To apply. They do not want that. So you basically have to go to law school in Hawaii and have to be a resident of Hawaii to
and I bet there's probably one school per, well, at least for the larger islands. I'm sure there's a school there, so you don't have to constantly commute or relocate from one island to the other.
Caleb, just as the last law question I have, with Arkansas, what other states do you have reciprocity with?
So there's a lot actually. Arkansas is
Yeah.
part of what's called the UBE,
Hmm.
and so there are a number. I think there's close to 20 something other states at this point.
Jesus.
Now here's the situation with that though, right? So each state has a bar passing. If the UBE, every state that is part of it takes the same test, but each
Yeah.
state will have a different bar pass number that they require. Now Arkansas is pretty high. So if I pass in Arkansas, I think there's only like two other states that that are higher. They have a higher passage rate, so I can transfer that score to any of those other states. Texas and Georgia are not part of that. I think Mississippi is. I'm not sure. Alabama
Yeah.
might be. I don't know, but Missouri definitely is. There's a number of them
Yeah.
that you get to pick from. But with the work that I do, and the reason I went to law school in the first place, the van, the work I do with the unsheltered community, the work that I'm doing currently in trying to get better landlord tenant laws, all of that work is here. Roger's job is here. Our family are close by.
Hmm.
So we're planning on sticking around. I want to stay in Little Rock and fight for as long as I can,
Hmm.
and then retire elsewhere. But we're going to stick in the city here. Pretty. That's my goal anyway. Until
Okay.
all hell breaks loose and it turns into a caliphate, and then I have to flee.
Yeah.
Well, we'll all be in the same boat,
Well,
I guess.
it's not. Well, I won't. Um, you'll be like, I gotta go to New Jersey for asylum. Well, at least Bill's there.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be it. I got family in most of those states, so.
I got nobody. I'm an orphan, so.
You got us.
Um,
You got us.
I got you for now. Um,
What does that mean?
I don't know. Everything seems to go south for me at some point. Something that didn't go south for me. I'm very tired, folks. I just have to tell you that outright. There's bags under my eyes. Had a big meeting presentation this morning at 8 a.m. Went spectacularly well. Always great when you leave them laughing,
Yeah.
and I did. Because that's what people forget about me. I'm funny sometimes. I'm funny, and I was funny today, and that helped.
Funny, damn
Like
it.
like
I was
haha
funny.
funny or like funny.
Oh, what joke! What a knee slapper! Funny. So, I don't know why we'll go off on that. Let's bring it back to the show. One thing we do have to talk about the show tonight. There's going to be two main segments that we're going to have. Uh, the first main segment is going to be about the life and work of George Perez, who left us very recently. And we were all huge fans to varying degrees, but all fans. And we have to mark the man's passing. Because of that, if you are listening to the audio episode, you may be at a big disadvantage this time around because of the graphics we're going to be showing on the live stream. We are going to post the pictures that we talk about on our Facebook page, but just keep in mind that if you are listening to the audio version, you may not get as much as you usually do out of it because of that element. So apologize for that, but there's really no way around that from what we want to discuss. And then after that, we went to the movies and we saw the new MCU film Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and we each have opinions about that. So
we have opinions.
we have opinions about it, and you'll hear all about that. So before we start, one of our early segments that we always impose, that's a terrible word that we always start with, is we show off Geek Gets. And it's usually the point where Steve says he didn't get anything, and I know Caleb's been really, really busy, yet people have been sending him stuff. Steve, why don't we start with you? Did you get any Geek Gets from the last 2 weeks?
Not really. Not anything that I have close by, sadly. So,
Okay.
Just sit here without geek out.
I've got a few things, and so here's two things. Number one, I have the best friends in the world. Number two, none of them listen to me. So when I said, "Hey, don't get me anything," because I never know what to do. I'm that guy who, like, if you get me a gift, I got to get you one too. Like, I don't know what to do in those situations. So I said, hey, if you want to get me anything, make a donation to the van. Like that's my heart. So do that. And I really did mean that. It's not that like fake humility kind of thing. It's just generally what Roger and I live a good life. But I have friends and they know my taste and they are the best friends in the world. And so they've been sending me a few things. It's been a very musical couple of weeks. So I'm going to go real quick. I bought this one for me, but it counts. So I got The Cure Greatest Hits. I'm not sure if I'd shown that to you or not. But I also got Moral Hygiene Ministry, the new Ministry album. So a little industrial in there. Our good friend Ray Onomar, if you're friends with him on the Facebooks, sent me a couple of Sade albums. I love her. She is amazing. Beautiful sultry tones. He also sent me. I got a little Chet Baker. I'm a huge jazz fan. Love to listen to jazz while I study. And in that vein, he also got me some Miles Davis. Sorry about the glare. So I've got that. Also, he sent me some Chris Stapleton, so I can get my twang on. And then last but not least, my good friend and yours, friend of the show, has been on several times, Miss Wendy Freeman, love of my life, just lives in my heart. She sent me little Hendrix. And actually, the only other Hendrix I own is the one that you sent me. So Wendy and Bill both hooked me up with Hendrix. And also, she sent me this, which I'm really excited about. It's called Eccentric Soul, the Saru label. Um, I'm not familiar with what
Those
this is.
compilations are so good.
Yeah, it's just a
They're so
mixture
good.
of stuff of different soul music. So, I'm expecting some Motown, some stuff I've never heard before because apparently there's a lot of these compilations. So, super excited to dig into this because there's going to be a lot of good stuff there. I love soul. I love soul and funk. Like, I love music of all genres. I just love music. So, but super excited to plug in the headphones in and listen to this. Really looking forward to it.
I have to say, with the Sade album that you have there, the first one, the debut album, Diamond Life,
Mm-hmm.
in college, that was the Getting Laid album when I
Yeah.
was,
Oh, dude.
it
No, her.
was Diamond Life and the debut album by Ready for the World.
Uh huh.
Those were the two that it was,
It
you were
is.
going to town if you put that
Yeah.
on.
Her
Yeah.
her voice is pure sex.
Yeah.
Pure sex. Like, it's beautiful. It's wonderful to listen to.
I had a
She's
friend who
also
had something very crude to say about it, and I can't repeat it. I'll repeat it offline, but it's very true. Yeah.
well. She also, Sade is just fantastic, but she made the forehead extra sexy, and was doing that high pony before
Yeah.
before anybody else made it cool. Ariana Grande, but yeah, I mean, very-
Steve, we lost you.
yeah, I know.
You just went-
So the dog is making some noises, so
Okay.
you might hear me clip out.
Okay. I'll just abbreviate what I've got. Again, the this year's Free Comic Book Day fell between episodes. It was the Saturday after.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I just want to show you two things. One which ties into what we're talking about. One of the things I got is a Crisis on Infinite Earths DC Direct figure of a Weaponer of Quard, and I actually got this before we received the news that day of George Perez's passing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a little weird, but um, got that in my travels. I just wanted to show like the non-comic booky things that I got from Free Comic Book Day with the sales. And one of the shops had an amazing selection of Marvel and DC tabloids from the 70s. A lot of them I have. This is one that didn't survive childhood, so a nice collection of Superboy and the Legion of Superhero stories. And I also wanted to show you some because you can get Geek Gets on the cheap. Very much so. There are new for 2022 Batman Hot Wheels. So there
Nice.
is an Arkham Asylum Batmobile that most times the Batmobiles are in black. This is in a crimson red. It's very hard to make out from this, but it's actually like a almost like a burnt red. Really nice. And for some reason they squished the '66 Batmobile into this weird thing here, and there was no way I wasn't going to get that. And at Dollar Tree, they they have participations with a company called Peachtree Playthings out of Georgia. If you remember that they had the Disney comic books that were only available at Dollar Tree were from this company, and they do a lot of stuff. They have new magazines which do have comic content. So for the $1.25 that you can spend, you can get an Avengers and a Spider-Man magazine that are out now. The comic book stories are for all ages, but a nice thing about the Spider-Man story is it's a story that was originally printed in the UK and was never printed here before. So nice little bit of a rarity. So if you hit your Dollar Tree, you can find those.
Yeah,
So
that's really cool.
those are my gets.
And interesting enough, Caleb. After the last episode, I went and checked out Five Below, and they do have several of those hardcover collections there as well. Like $5.
Oh, nice.
Because Bill knows that I never go to Five Below.
Yeah.
So I finally walked in there. Unfortunately, they didn't really have a lot of fun stuff because I did look. Yeah, for family business. I did look for a lot of the other figures and the things that they like, the Spin Masters or anything. Nothing. So
Yeah.
but plenty of different earbuds.
Yeah.
And candy.
Funny, yeah. My Five Below never had actual comics. Like they have really cool. They'll have action figures. They have T-shirts. I've gotten a couple of really cool T-shirts from there. Really cool T-shirts from there. But they never have comics. And
with ones by me, they do tend to have comic bags. Like DC will be like a six pack for $5.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And Archie also as well has bags. Not so much recently, but sometimes I think it's just when you hit it.
Could be
depending upon when they do get these shipments in, because I've seen Five Belows where they are packed to the gills with those 5-inch Spin Master figures, and others that never got them in.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Ollie. Like everybody posts these amazing omnibuses from Ollie.
My Ollie sucks.
We never see them.
My Ollie sucks shit.
A bunch of My First Bible Story comics.
Yeah.
Oh well. I mean, ours. The one that I have here in town is
the one you took me to was amazing.
So the one that I took Bill to, we've talked about this. I mean, it had one of those massive tables, that are usually covered with like Paula Deen cookware.
Yeah.
This table was stacked high, full of trades and omnibus and everything, and then also every bit of space below the table part was just filled with stacks. You had to dig through everything just to try and find something, but it was great.
It was beautiful, and we spent so long there, and I don't think we even scratched the surface.
No, and then
we did one side of it or something. Yeah.
Somebody must have come and and purchased a ton of it more. They returned a lot.
Yeah.
Because their selection now is nowhere near as good as it used to be.
But when I was in upstate New York, that was when I first saw all the Fables hardcovers and. Yeah.
Yep, we can still get those. In fact, they keep bringing out different ones. So I'm hoping that maybe at some point I could get all of the the deluxe editions.
Mine sucks.
You never know.
Yeah. So. Oh God, Steve, when you go quiet, it has a very unsettling feel.
It's almost too quiet.
Yeah, it's almost too quiet. It's like serial killer.
I guess
quiet.
That just means that I'm way too loud.
I guess so. All right. So the thing the day we wished didn't come that we all knew was coming.
Yeah.
And we did have George Perez. Now, what was it? Was it pancreatic cancer?
Yeah.
That he had. But this was also after years of tremendous problems with diabetes and some other maladies. But he did leave us on, I believe it was the 9th. Was that correct? May 9th? It was Free Comic Book Day, coincidentally.
So I thought it was May 5th.
Maybe it was the 5th. I don't know.
It's listed as May 6th. Sorry,
May
Okay.
6th.
it's
So
May
May
6th.
6th, though,
Yeah.
9 upside down. So
Yeah.
that one,
Yes, May
uh,
6th.
he left us. And I have to say, like with John Byrne, he was one of the first artists where I deliberately collected comics if they were the artist. Um, Primarily after I had returned to comics. Now I was familiar with his work when my initial run of reading comics in the '70s. Just for the timeline, I read up until December of 1980. December of 1980 was a hard stop for me, and like most geek stuff, I just went all like rock music after that point for a few years, and didn't come back until 1985 in my senior year of high school. And when I came back, that was when I discovered the New Teen Titans, and for me, it was almost as if it was like, okay, this was the comic I was always waiting for that I never
Right.
got growing up. It was a youth team. It was interesting characters. It was a remarkably talented creative team that were behind it. Um, really memorable stories, varieties of stories. It almost felt like there was a different flavor every 2 or 3 issues, because of the terrain that they covered, whether it was, uh, Brother Bud's cult, then moving on to something like a very real problem of teenage runaways in the United States at the time in the '80s. So, um, if just for that, there's a big place in my heart for New Teen Titans. Now, Caleb, I know with you, was it his late '90s run in Avengers that did
Yeah,
it
it was.
for you, or was it something else?
No, it was Kurt Busiek and George Perez's Avengers, the third
Yeah,
volume. So it would have been, yeah, late '90s, early 2000s. Yeah, I've told the story before. I grew up out in the middle of nowhere. The closest comic book store, and I didn't even know where it was an hour away. And so when I was just a wee little Caleb, I had braces, and so that meant that once a month my mother drove me up to the orthodontist in Little Rock, to get my braces worked on or whatever, the Titans or whatever they do. And we always went to the mall, and not even a comic book store, but in the mall there was a Walden Books, and I she used to. This was back in the day. I'm assuming this was commonplace. Either that or my mother was either really trusting or was just wanting me to get kidnapped, but she would just leave me by myself in Walden Books, sitting there reading. I would read books to the point that I actually got to know the staff. Like they knew this little chubby kid that would come in and just hang out and read while his mom went off and shopped. And that's where I found comics. That's where I discovered them the first
mhm,
time, and I can still remember, in detail, the day that I pulled. They had a spinner rack. The day that I pulled, I think it was issue 6 of the Avengers, of Kurt Busiek and George Perez's run, and opened it up. Now I'd been looking at comics before that, right? But they were just fun books. They were just cool stuff. Like the Image was happening. I would pick up some Cyber Force, something, all these weird things. But I picked up the Avengers, and it blew my mind because it wasn't anything like those other comics that I'd seen before. But it had a classic feel, but it was dynamic. And that was the first time I ever actually went back to flip to the front cover and see who drew this. Like, oh, there's a human being behind the pencils in this.
mhm,
And it was George Perez, and of course, it was Kurt Busiek writing it. It was the Avengers getting back together. And it is not hyperbole to say that singular moment in time had a vast impact on my life. I would not be sitting here with you guys if it hadn't been for that moment in time. That made me fall in love with comics. That made me come back and read more comics.
mhm,
That made me come back to comics after a hiatus. My best friend Craig, I know because I walked into a comic store. You guys, I know because I love comics. It's because of George Perez. All of the stuff behind me in my entire life
yep,
can be traced back to one moment as a child, picking up a George Perez comic book and being blown away by how he illustrated the Avengers. And I owe so much to him, like, of my personality, my personhood, and just my love of the genre in general. He is the focal point. He's that for me,
mhm,
and always has been. It will always be George.
yeah. What you said applies to me as well. If I did not connect with New Teen Titans, I don't know if I'd be talking with you guys. I don't know if I'd have this interest at that point.
Hmm.
If at that point the stuff didn't hit me. Steve, do you have anything to add?
So, you know, unlike you guys, I think because George Perez I didn't come to discover until a couple years into actually reading comics. So I first really got into comics with X-Men, so it was Chris Claremont and his writing that really drew me into the story possibilities and the colorful characters and the soap opera style of comics. But the first major event, most comic book readers encounter an event every so often, but they weren't as commonplace as they are now back in the late 80s, early 90s, or at least weren't as hyped up as much. And the big one for me was the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yep.
So with the Infinity Gauntlet, Jim Starlin writing, but you have George Perez and Ron Lim, trading off on a lot of the artwork, and of course a lot of that is George's work. And the way that he was able to draw everybody was so impressive to me. Just how big in scope, he could get with his work, and that's what made that crossover. Before I had even read anything Crisis on Infinite Earths, that was like, oh my god, this is so amazing, this is so impressive. And from there also being able to afterwards checking out New Teen Titans in back issues, Wonder Woman in back issues, and of course Crisis on Infinite Earths, actually finally reading that and going, oh, this is, so he's been doing this for years, just being able to, bring in all these characters, bring them to life, and do an amazing job with them.
Right.
That was, I think probably my first encounter with him, and just that level of impression just continued. All throughout his career, being able to look at something and say, one, that's clearly George Perez, and two, just expect that it's going to be amazing. If George Perez is on a book or doing a cover or anything, that it's going to be gorgeous, it's going to have just a lot of dynamism to it, and just be fantastic. Before we continue, we do have a couple people who have joined us. We do have John Runyon saying hello, David Toby, and Tony Gilkinson have all joined us as well.
Hey guys.
So hello.
George is one of the few artists that could draw a double page spread with every character in the line, but make it make sense. It was cohesive. It didn't feel cluttered. And I think so one of the issues from that early Avengers run, he draws all the Avengers. They're coming back together and they're having these meetings. And Cap calls them, and they're all sitting in an audience like a theater. And to be fair, Dennis Dunphy, D-Man, who I love, is sitting in the middle, but he stinks. And so there's everybody's around him. And so you have all of these other Avengers crowding the edges. Yeah. But it made sense. It made sense to the narrative. And he could just fill the pages with everybody, with bodies upon bodies. And no one was left out. All the details were there. Every strand of hair was drawn. And he put his love into that.
Yeah. He did that many times with DC.
Right.
One thing that was puzzling initially was that he was not on Legion of Superheroes, which was where everybody thought he would land because of his work on Avengers. And he finally did the extended miniseries, the Legion of Three Worlds, and his only criteria was he gets to draw every Legionnaire.
Everybody.
And most artists would be like, okay, I'll do 7. Yeah. Let's have a core of 7. And George wasn't like that. And I think that also hits that, he had such a sterling reputation in the industry. He's remarkably nice to fans. Not all of these creators we talk about are in that bracket. But he always was. And, even when the health issues were becoming very problematic, he was still doing the occasional shows, cut back on the commissions, cut back on a lot of stuff. But, he was there as long as he could be.
He loved his fans. He loved us.
The fans loved him back.
Yeah.
It was, It was, I think he's one of the best ambassadors of the medium we've ever had.
Well, I think he loved the fans because at the end of the day, he was a fan. And that's the same reason he likes drawing all the characters, because he was a fan. Like
Yeah.
he loved this. He loved these universes. He loved them. It didn't matter if it was DC or Marvel or if it was Sirens. He loved comics. He loved the not only the medium but the culture behind it. It's what brought him into it, and he gave that back. And so he respected fans because he used to like he at one point he was just a fan, and so he I've heard him speak. You guys have heard him speak several times, and he would flat out say that he's like, who knows if the next great creator is that kid that's walking up in front
Yeah.
of me. Like I'm gonna respect them for being there, and they give their time to back to us to tell us how much we loved us. And you talk to some creators, you go up there and you tell them, hey, huge fan of your work. It means so much to me. Like they hear the same spiel over and over again. And some creators you can tell, okay, yeah, I'm getting the same thing. Like the guy behind you just said the same thing. George Perez would look you in the eye and act like you were the only person who had ever said that to him, and it mattered. It mattered so much. And I can say that, and of course it's shaded by the fact that I'm like I said earlier, George Perez is the epicenter of my love for the medium. So I'm kind of biased, but it's true, right? Like it's just who he was as a human being.
Yeah. So we did prepare some slides of his work that we're going to talk about. So Steve, do you want to start that up? And through this, we'll probably have some recommendations that you could jot down. And I think it's a pretty expansive history, and we're pretty knowledgeable. At least two of us are on this, so we can take it from here. Okay, so this is early Perez.
Yeah.
Now, the first story he had was a gag story and the first appearance of Deathlock in Astonishing Tales, and it's really not reminiscent of his work. But the two earliest series that he was assigned to through Marvel were Man Wolf and Creatures on the Loose, and in the middle there you have the Sons of the Tiger on the top, which was the name of the series, which was where they introduced White Tiger. White Tiger was the first character that George had co-created. So, um, and it's very important because George was from Puerto Rico. This was the first major Puerto Rican uh, superhero character. Deadly Hands of Kung Fu was the name of the series that it was in, and it was a Marvel magazine, so it did get a bit more adult than others. The Creatures on the Loose number 34 cover there is also George's first cover. So you see there that John Jameson and in his horror guys in the 70s, like it happened to a lot of them. Uh, kind of freaking out on a train. I think you're not seeing too much of George's style, but you do see there the detail on the train, the detail on the tracks. There's you can see the glimpses of what's to come. Almost immediately after that, he was assigned to the adaptation of Logan's Run, the film from 1976, sci-fi film, and I think that glass structure that you have of the hand of Sanctuary, that's a recurring image. I think
Hmm.
of that sort of reflective, reflective, reflective format. The You
The
do see
texture
that
of it.
again and again throughout
Yeah.
his work, and let me tell you, like, it's not the best film. It's so dated, but you see that cover and you want to see that film. I think without a doubt. So, that's some of his earliest work, and that was from Marvel.
We had a couple more people join us. We have Jose Escalin
Hello, Jose.
has popped in. Hey Bears, and Lee Minado as well. And he actually he has a couple notes here. George Perez was great on so many levels. He was so sweet when he attended a convention here in Brazil. Treated every single person almost as a personal friend.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's seems to be pretty common
Yeah.
experience there.
Okay.
So let's go on to the next.
Okay. So this was his first run of Avengers. He started somewhere around the 140s. 150, I believe, there is his first cover, and he, was on the book. Went to Fantastic Four, did some other stuff, went back to Avengers. So it wasn't a continuous run in the 70s and early 80s. But I do think he is the quintessential Avengers artist of that time because he did leave an imprint. Redesigned certain characters like Wonder Man, designed Jocasta,
Yeah.
and more than anybody, when you do think of the energy that comes out of Iron Man's bands, I think of George with
When
his own particular crackle there that you see on the 200.
Bill, do you remember when John Buscema, when his last Avengers issue was?
Um,
When did that happen?
I want to say like, well, he had two runs.
Yeah.
He had the 60s run, and then in the 80s, I want to say probably around like the 180, 190
Okay. Yeah.
mark, like just before the 200, before like everything fell apart.
Yeah.
But that was a fairly lengthy run through the 80s of Roger Stern writing and John Buscema drawing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is because I actually agree with you. I think when you think about the Avengers of that era, you automatically think about George Perez. But
Yeah.
we have some friends that they lock in and associate John Buscema with the Avengers too,
Yeah.
which is fair. I
Yeah,
think it just is a
absolutely.
matter of
Yeah.
and those two are stylistically you can tell them apart, but I think that there's some connectivity there in the way that they look
Yep.
for sure.
Oh, absolutely. There have been points where the Avengers, and I'm not going to name the artist because I'm not a dick, but there was some very pedestrian artists
Yeah, yeah,
associated
yeah,
with the title. And when you did have somebody like Buscema, particularly Buscema in the 60s,
yeah.
and George Perez, it made a big difference. No matter who the storyteller, no matter who the writer was, the artist for that particular book made such a big difference. Yeah. Okay, this is you, Caleb.
Yeah, so this is an example of you take the color away and you can really see the work that George would do. And this is out of the third volume of the Avengers. I forget which issue it was, but you see some of what I was talking about. And there's going to be other examples of this too. How he can put, and I think this was a cover. He can put so many characters meshed together. I mean, there is no room. These people. I mean, tangents. Usually when we talk about artist tangents are a bad thing. There's actually very few tangents in this, but he could overlay so many things and still make it make sense. Like exactly what's happening, and you see it draws your eye. And there's a series of triangles in this that draws your eye back and forth, so you can see and pinpoint every character. And just the work that he did with negative space was always something that got me. When you see the stars in the sky there, so just a beautiful, beautiful image. And he wasn't afraid to just fill every nook and cranny with I don't know what other word to use than texture, because that's just what all this is. But there's so many of them. I mean, you see in this, it's gory, it's rough, but there are parts that are smooth. You see a saline quality to the hair, where you see you get it. You can feel the garments, and they look totally different. So I mean, it's just the man could tell an entire story without leaving a blank space.
Okay.
And it's kinetic.
He really does like those. Yeah, he loves those big, extremely busy fight scenes that are just so fun to pick out all the different pairings and to follow the energy blasts and the who's fighting whom, and it's pretty fantastic. Even in black and white, you can see how much depth there is.
Yeah.
Case in point.
Again, this is from that third volume, and this is actually a double page spread from, I think, this was issue 18 or 19. I'm sure there was a 2-issue crossover with the Thunderbolts at the time. That's where this comes from, and you can see some of those members in and around it. But the way it draws your eye, from left to right, top to bottom, where you just get all of these characters, and there's just such an energy there. And even though there's the overlay, each of them, you could isolate each of these images, be it Firestar, who's right in the middle, or Cap, or especially my girl Wanda there in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those would be phenomenal on their own pinup, but he put them all together, and it was so fun. And see, this is, we talk about the 90s image guys, like being able to tap in and know what quote unquote 14-year-old boys want. This was me at 14. I wanted this. This was just my heartbeat. um, and it is both respectful of the characters, but it's also fun, and it makes sense. I mean, he's not being photorealistic, but he is giving you, he's not Neil Adams, but he's giving you these characters in proportion to what they would be in a
Hmm.
way that translates really, really well.
Okay, nice.
And here's another one.
Yeah, just
Yeah. So this is actually the cover of Avengers 1. And
Mm-hmm.
this run of Avengers, I think it's important to note that this was after the relative failure of Heroes Reborn,
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
Avengers was the most Marvel book at the time, I felt, and it was, after uh, a mistake, I think. I think it was a noble mistake, but a mistake with what they attempted to do with Heroes Reborn. Um, that with Heroes Return, even much more so than the other three titles, Captain America, Iron Man, and Fantastic Four.
Hmm.
This was the one that was the most celebratory and the most in love with being a Marvel book in and of itself. So I really like this run. I really
I do
love the
too. Yeah.
U6 run in this. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So,
this one, just to throw this one in there. I know it was kind of tough to fit in, but I think this one does a really good job of showing all of that. So, Caleb, where's this one from?
so this is from an earlier Avengers run. This is not from the. This is from I think somewhere in the 200s. But it's something that just stuck in my mind because again, you see, this would have been after John Byrne did his run on the Avengers because you can see obviously there the Vision is in white, but he drew this, uh, and it was part of. Actually, I'm wondering if this is not part of the Jim Starlin
I believe this is
story.
Yeah,
Infinity
Yeah,
it's
Gauntlet. Yeah.
Infinity
yeah,
Gauntlet.
this is
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, this is Infinity
Mm-hmm.
Gauntlet. That's what I was thinking. And you can just see, Bill, what you talked about there, that crackle,
Mhm.
that was so quintessential to him. But again, he's giving you so many of these characters, and all of them are put around whether they are facing you or whether they are at weird angles. You just get a good feel of the size and scope of it. Uh, excellent storytelling. There's just there's so much stuff here that you just want to know. Hey, what's happening? Like, what's going on here? Like, why is like just the conversation that's happening between Wanda and Vision? Like, what's happening there? There's nothing pedestrian about any of this.
Yeah.
Just fun. These are both okay. So, um, what locked me in as an Avengers fan, not just as a comics fan, was Ultron Unleashed, which was I think issues 18 through 22 of the Volume 3 of Avengers, somewhere around that. As a kid who didn't know who Ultron was, I thought it was really cool. That pinup of Ultron, just devious, connected into everything. Early days of the internet, where he's got all the inner workings of everything happening. And then one of my favorite panels in comics. Period. I will have this panel tattooed on me one day. Is that middle panel that you see on my screen? It's on the right hand side. It's the one that's in color. Thor had been missing all this time. They'd kind of done the thing where they take him out of it and do some other stuff with him, but he wasn't active at the time. And the Avengers are getting their ass whipped. They are getting, Ultron has made he's got a bunch of adamantium, he's got a bunch of other metals, and he's made just hundreds of thousands. It's kind of what they based that not so great Avengers movie off of. But the comic is excellent. Check it out. At the last minute, Thor comes in, having been through some stuff. I think he was like pinned under. They took him out early. He was pinned under some stuff. Uh, he just comes up, knocks out the wall, and just says, Ultron, we would have words with thee. And that is one of my favorite Thor lines of all time. Thank you, Kurt Busiek. But also that image from George Perez. Ultron is scared. You see fear in Ultron's eyes, and Ultron's an automaton whose face doesn't move. So it's pretty badass.
Okay, I wanted to provide this because I do think it's a shame that we rarely got
Yeah.
George on X-Men. There's an annual, I think it's annual number 4 from Claremont's early run. This was prepared for, and you can tell by the costumes that it's just before X-Men number 1. That you just have Cyclops and Marvel Girl in their late late period X Factor clothes. So I believe this was prepared in 1992. Couldn't have been earlier because of Gypsy, and was never used. And
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure what the rationale was, but it did eventually appear as a trading card, and it deserved to be a poster. I mean, that's
It
beautiful,
really
and I would
did.
have
Yeah.
loved to have seen
Yeah.
him on X-Men. Yeah.
I need Jubilee and Logan to get out of the way of the main feature of this, though.
Yeah.
Okay, let me bring up the next set here. And this is
Okay,
where we get
so
into the DC books.
yeah.
So
So in between 1980 and 81, Jeanette Kahn made a very active play for some of the major talents at Marvel, which included Marv Wolfman, George Perez, and Roy Thomas. And with George, again, as I mentioned before, a lot of the speculation was either we were going to put him on a team book, and it more than likely would be Legion. The artist on Justice League of America at the time, Dick Dillon, died very suddenly in the middle of an arc. So George's first work on Justice League of America was actually completing that year's JLA JSA team up, which included the New Gods.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, there's a nice place in my heart for Dick Dillon. I mean, that's what I initially grew up with, but it's a seismic shift if you see that art in that particular crossover. His tenure on Justice League actually wasn't that long; it was only a few issues. But this is from one of the early issues. It's from I believe issue 192, and in that story we get the real origin of Red Tornado, what we thought was what we thought about the character and origins on Earth 2 was very different from the reality. And this is one of my favorite panels. It's after Reddy kind of like freaks out because of some machinations with his creator T.O. Morrow, and at the time he's living with Kathy Sutton and their adopted daughter Tranya, who's from like effectively,
Yeah.
I think they actually retconned it to Markovia, but it was an Eastern European country. So uh, the smashed glasses, courtesy of the Red Tornado smashing through it, losing his shit, and the Justice League comes to investigate, and it's just a perfect marriage of the of image and dialogue. Maybe we can help my son. We're friends of his, and you see the active members of the team already with Hal and Bruce in an investigation mode, and I just absolutely love this. And this was kind of like a clarion call that DC was not going to be the same at this point.
Right.
That they were going to take some of the best, some of the best elements that Marvel had. Prior to that, it was. There was definitely a shift when Jeanette Kahn took hold of the company. It was different. You felt it, but it didn't really coalesce until the '80s, and this is kind of the start of that. So
Before we move on from this panel, number one, I've always loved how sleek that George drew Hal, but
yep,
also I think it's important to note because this is early DC work for him. I love the quintessential person is buried in the back. That's Diana. And if you
yeah,
look at the way he draws, so this is some of the, he was new to the company. Editorial was still doing their thing. You juxtapose, and you can't see a lot of her here, but you juxtapose the way that he draws her here versus the way that he will go on to draw her about 5-6 years later, completely different. And it is George unleashed when he has his way. And we're going to see some of those images later, but I thought it was great that you provided this image because I wanted to just draw your attention to that and draw the viewers' attention to that. Look at how he's drawing him and how this has more of a classic feel versus where he's going to inevitably come to
yeah,
with his interior work.
yeah, this is definitely what I would consider very still Silver Age.
Mm-hmm.
And when
'80s.
no, well, but the
Stylistically.
look is very Silver Age. Yeah, I mean, you can put
I
this
think
panel
this is
into pretty much any book in
this is
1975.
far more grown up than Silver Age. This is end of Bronze. I don't think this is Silver Age at all.
I think you still have that feel where you feel that this could be in the 70s sometime. I mean,
Oh yeah,
yes,
I mean,
Silver Age is more
70s.
60,
I
50s,
also don't
60s.
consider the 70s Silver Age.
Yeah,
generally,
but this is definitely like I would say a younger age than what happened in the 80s, and I think George
it's more classic DC. Let's put it that way. What we had known
classic
as
DC,
more classic DC at that time. Yeah,
because this is very classic DC. But when George has his own free reign, I think more or less to design the characters, to draw the characters how he would want to draw them.
Yeah.
I think that right there creates a new look.
To be the person
DC
in the middle ground, I think if you look at the facial expressions, there's like some Wally Wood quality to like the faces that you don't see later on.
Yeah, for sure.
And also Starlin. I mean,
yeah.
Kathy's reaction, that's totally Starlin.
Yeah. Oh, it's very it's olive oil. It's very what's her face as olive oil
as Warlock and Pip are walking by.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then here's some Superman.
Yeah. So I asked you to put these images. This is from I think actually the first issue of George Perez's Superman, and actually encourage anybody to head out and find your copy of this. But they did a beautiful collected edition hardcover. Call an omnibus. It's not as thick as other omnibuses, but it's George Perez's Adventure of Superman. I love this image because of what you see, just how fun it is. Like this. At this point, this is a shape-shifting alien essentially that's posing as Superman, right? And so it launches this construction equipment, this giant concrete tube at Superman. And he just flies through the middle of it, like he whirlwinds through it. He's having fun. It's almost like a kid in an amusement park as he's playing around with it. And then you flip over a few pages, and here's what's really cool about this. This is that quintessential Superman pose, right? Like just chiseled jaw, just Superman being great, the flag in the background on top of the Daily Planet. He's come back. He's proud to be home. He's proud to be, he is a national symbol, a nationalist symbol to that point. And George doesn't shy away from that, but he's just beaming. He's proud to be back home. The third panel on this is one of my favorites. This is, I want to say 19 or maybe early 90s. I forget when, like I said, I've got the
It's like 90. It's about 90. Yeah. 89 or 90. Yeah.
1986 was a dynamic year for comics for a number of reasons, but I mean that's the year that we got both Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns. It influenced everybody, and nobody was beyond its influence. The last panel where it shows Clark behind the flag using the negative space so well, he drew that. Like he drew that from Frank Miller, and he's talked about it before. But he's like, look at what they did with that. And so this is showing like that influence affected even him and the way that he like conceived his art. And I love that last panel because it's pure Superman. The curl, the flag, the simplicity of it is wonderful. And that just goes to show you, like he was so talented, so multifaceted. He could draw every person on the page, or he could do this negative space work where he just, a few lines and just kills it.
Okay, here's my baby. The New Teen Titans debuted in 1980 and was, I think if you were reading comics in the early 80s, there were 3 doors you could go down as a starting reader. You had the X-Men door, the Legion door, and the Titans door. And Titans for me was that was the nicest door to go through. And some of it was that these were characters that I loved. You had new characters there in this particular iteration. Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire were all new, and it really was a real shot of adrenaline, and showed that DC could have a young team. I mean, they were very open about it. They were very open about they wanted to compete with X-Men, but in putting this together, it very quickly had its own vibe. Didn't necessarily cover the terrain. It couldn't cover the same terrain in regards to dealing, subversively with issues of bigotry and racism. But certainly was a socially conscious book in and of itself. Wonderful runaway story, as I mentioned earlier in the show. 50 is one of my favorite issues, which is the marriage of Donna Troy, and just little things that they showed. Terry Long was substantially older than Donna, and had a kid, and they showed some of the complications with that. First and foremost, the amazing development that they had with Dick Grayson in this book, and
Yeah.
that Nightwing is um, forever known as being created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez, and um, I have to say that, like, there's Dick before and after Marvin and George. Um, they are the two most important creators in that character's history,
Facts. Absolute
and
facts.
and it's nice to see. And if you're unfamiliar with the original run, there's so many great stories. The Fearsome Five, Brother Blood, the first time they deal with the return of Doom Patrol members and the Brotherhood of Evil, and of course there's the introduction of Terra and all that weird shit that goes on into the Judas Contract. Amazing stories with Deathstroke, as I mentioned. Just a really incredible run, really
I've
incredible run, and I think
I've
it holds up.
actually so I'm going to find out because I've actually never read this in its entirety. I've read bits and pieces of it, but
Mhm.
this is as much as I love Georgia, and as much, I try to read. I have the misfortune of having to read this stuff in hindsight, right? Like, so
Yep.
collected editions, because I wasn't reading comics when they came out. So it's one of those things I'm going to relive in the now. But fortunately, we have omnibuses for that.
Yep.
So this is one of those things that I'm going to sit down and reread in its entirety very soon.
Okay. 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 So here's two Titans images. The one on the left was a commission. Could you imagine engaging a commission, and this is what you get back? And what this is on what's on my left, hopefully on your left as well,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
is the original Titans members before the new Teen Titans relaunch.
Yeah.
George always said he loved these characters. He always wanted to work in characters like Bumblebee and specifically
Hawk and
uh,
Dove.
not so much Hawk and Dove. I think the one he really, and they did get to use him, was Speedy. Um, it was a big battle between using Kid Flash or using Speedy. And there is a time when Dick isn't on the scene where Roy kind of fills in for him during parts of the run. But that's what's on the left, and what's on the right. And I still have this, and unfortunately has some water damage. I have no idea how it got water damage. This is a promotional post. Can't even say promotional because you could buy it. It was a poster of the new Teen Titans during the run, and that is just a beautiful piece of work
Mm-hmm.
on the right. And they really should reissue that. They really should reissue that.
Well, maybe they will now.
Hopefully. Okay, and then this is another commission, if you can believe it. And this is teams we're talking about. This is the Avengers versus the new Teen Titans, and this will lead probably into some other discussions. And like even here, though he's not necessarily a new Teen Titan, George is using Speedy. He loves Speedy.
I would love
Speedy.
to know. I would love to know what the person who owned this commission actually paid for it. When you consider the inflation, like, so I just booked a commission today for Heroes Con. It's going to be an 11x14 or whatever. Yeah. It's $300. Like, but that's a lot of money, and you like that. Consider when this was drawn, they probably paid. Then this would cost you $2,000 now, $3,000. If
I would probably say like an artist comparable to thing like three to four.
Yeah, I was considering inflation, just just based on that alone. But it's ridiculous.
Whatever cost plus a sandwich. I mean, it doesn't. It's like it's going to be higher, and also add in a sandwich. This I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you didn't lump this in with the other Superman stuff. One thing George was responsible for was some of the character redesigns in the 80s, and a lot of that was instigated by making some of the characters more toyetic for the Superpowers line. And Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Ed Hannigan, and George Perez were the main, and little bit Kirby later were the main ones engaged in doing particular redesigns for characters. And this was George's redesign for Lex Luthor, and the battle suit is something that's stuck with the character, these 40 years since.
Yeah, I remember this was the Lex Luthor, superpowers toy that I remember seeing. I don't think I ever got one of these, but yeah, definitely.
I got one over there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Was this before or after Watchmen?
Oh, this is before.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is before.
Yeah.
Watchmen was 86. The Superpowers line started in 84.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the comic book that corresponded with this, which was it was actually a anniversary issue of Action. One of the stories was the relaunch of Luthor, and the other relaunch of Brainiac.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Crisis on Infinite Earths, and this is a watershed event. Changed the DC universe forever. There are entire podcasts, dedicated to Crisis on Infinite Earths. One thing I do get a bit upset, and in some cases these are people I consider friends, is this critical reinterpretation of Crisis on the basis of reading it as if it was issued contemporaneously, if it was issued today. And you can't do that. To me, this
Yeah.
is like a Sergeant Pepper or a Citizen Kane. You have to look at it in the context of what was happening at the time, and it was first and foremost a mechanism to streamline DC. Um, so what you have is the most iconic cover within Crisis 12-issue run, where you have the death of Supergirl, and then on the right with the press coverage that Crisis had, this is a cover that George drew for the. Sometimes they would call it a professional fanzine, Amazing Heroes, that Fantagraphics put out. And I just think this is a stunning image. And, really, there weren't too many examples of the Trinity before this. Certainly those three characters were together, but they didn't. In the '70s, you didn't think of them as the Trinity. You
Right.
just didn't. And I just think this is my favorite George Perez cover. Just impressively dark Batman coexisting with remarkably powerful versions of Wonder Woman and Superman, with some of the ancillary and major characters from Crisis in the back. I absolutely love this cover. It's my favorite George Perez cover. And then Caleb, you chose the middle.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's part of that line. So when I chose these images, I was not thinking that we were going to go through them in detail. I thought we were going to be talking about it, and they're going to be flashing in the background. But this is, I wanted to show several examples of what he could do, and just the sheer number, the sheer volume of people that he could put in.
Yeah.
There is every single DC character, imaginable, is on this page, and they're cut in half. I mean, he doesn't even use all the space of it. So when I knew this existed and went down to hunt for it and found it, because it's a great example of some other stuff that we've shown you with Marvel that he could do. He's doing the same thing here. I do think this was a Crisis era.
It's Crisis, yeah. No, it's Crisis.
This is the House of Heroes when they're all called together.
Yeah.
Alexander Luthor, Pariah, and Harbinger.
Pariah.
Yeah.
It's just the man could do so much with so little space.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Yeah, that's
much bigger picture.
Yep. And you really do see all the texture of it.
Yeah. Okay, so that next slide, I wanted to provide these because George wasn't only involved in the big two. There were creator-owned situations that he had, like Crimson Plague, and you had mentioned Sirens.
Yep.
He did do work as a cover artist for the relaunch of the Thunder Agents in the '80s, and when with the pre-Marvel takeover of the Ultraverse and Malibu Comics, was the principal artist on Ultra Force, which brought together a lot of their principal characters and essentially was their version of a JLA or Avengers. Um, so if you want to look for something that's outside of the big two, you can also look to his work with CrossGen and
Hmm.
Solus. So it wasn't just the big two that he worked for. He would occasionally dip his toe in other waters. So
Now we
and
get to
Wonder
the
Woman, there you
to
go,
the other
with
stuff that he's
with his
also super
'87
famous
relaunch of
for.
Wonder Woman. Yep.
So
Yep.
this is a remaking, a recrafting. Other than Teen Titans, I would argue that this might be the thing that George Perez is most famous for. It's when he took over and completely redesigned, recrafted, and reviewed and Wonder Woman. Changed up everything, uh, and gave one of the quintessential. I think this is now a cornerstone must read to understand who this character is and where she came from. From her relationship with the gods to these amazing covers to just the triumphant George. So look, George drew women the way that nobody else drew women, especially at the time, right? They are sensual. They are and actually something I don't know if everybody knows outside of comics. George had he had a very lucrative career drawing uh, BDSM images for people. That was one thing he really liked to do, and he made a lot of money doing it. But
Yeah,
so he drew these
there are
women.
apparently a few porns where George has a role in. He not
Yes,
full frontal, but he's like the bartender
yeah,
or like the travel agent or something. That was the circles he ran in, and the circles
right.
his wife ran in, and
It made it perfect
yeah,
for Wonder Woman, though. I mean,
yeah,
like those
it
things
does,
translate
yeah,
so
yeah,
well.
because the kink elements just are there,
Right.
they're just there.
And George celebrates them. He doesn't turn them into something dirt. I mean, I'm doing air quotes, but dirty. He celebrates it because it is, and it is empowering. And it very much, it very much goes back to the origin of the character and how the character was invented and was conceived from the get go. And he gives you these incredibly exuberant, sexy, sensual, but powerful and autonomous poses from women, and he gives them all in Wonder Woman. I just love these images. The middle image is one of my favorite spreads from that from that entire run. Hermes is there, just floating around there, looking at the wreckage, and just trying to figure out how to scrape things up from here. So just glorious page. I forget if this was me or you, Bill. I think it was probably me. I really wanted to put a few images in here. The thing on the screen is a really new ish. I forget what year this came out. It's a spread showing yet all the women of DC. Diana, of course, leading the charge, but you've got Batgirl in there, you've got Supergirl in there, you've got um, just so many of the characters in there, and it's far enough away that my eyes are messing me up, and I can't tell you who all they are right now as I look at it on my screen. But he just gives you all of the women in DC, and again does that thing where he fills the page. But if you notice, with the color missing, the crackle is not. The crackle is still there, and that's what I love about this. Is he gives you just his line. We view comics with color, and we discern what's there, but you take the color away, and you can just really see the work that he's doing, and you really see the motion of the page. Bill, I think you're
I,
muted, Bill.
Think this is the only time I've seen him draw the Kate Spencer Manhunter,
Yeah.
and it's exquisite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing, Caleb, actually, to kind of jump off what you mentioned here. Yeah, Stargirl's in there, Batgirl and Batwoman together, which you didn't see too much before Detectives. I think James Tinian's Detective Run, but the hair, Wonder Woman's hair here, the ink work on this is just fantastic. Just the texture the texture of it is really really great.
And the
And of
sheen.
course, by this point, he had had about 20 years drawing
Yeah.
Wonder Woman's hair from like that giant curly, mid 80s thing
There
to this, but
this is
it's
a good
amazing.
time to interject about George inking.
Yeah.
Very often he used other inkers, whether Romeo Tangal. I mean, there was many other inkers that he used. But he actually loved inking, and he was very quick with it. So you will see, particularly Dan Jurgens, that he was initially on Dan's run of Teen Titans as the
Hmm.
inker, on the New 52 Green Arrow as the inker, and he
Rip
just
Breeding.
well, yeah, but as the inker.
Right.
Um, and he just particularly loved doing that occasionally because it was very quick. He could do it very quick. He said like almost 10 times as quick as he would draw. There are some situations out there where George Zinka, the best one, and it's just a beautiful story, was it's called DC Special: The Return of Donna Troy, written by Phil Jimenez with art by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and George on inks. And this was George saying, I wanted to have at least one series of DC
Yeah.
with an all Latino creative force, but not not something like El Diablo,
Right.
where it was an iconic DC character. That was centered around Donna returning after being murdered by Superman robots. Things got weird, um, but if you watch that, if you can find that, it's a beautifully drawn story. And George and Garcia Lopez, they just meld together so well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely Garcia Lopez, but there's some George tinges there on the pages, and it's beautiful work. So there are some situations where George was the inker that you can seek
Hmm.
out to.
This is a spread from that again from Wonder Woman. Just a great way of showing how his narrative skills. He tells an entire story. If you go through these bubbles that are on the screen, you get just everything that you want to know about who she is from some of her enemies. I mean, Cheetah is down there.
Yeah,
Some of the backstory as she works her way up and around. And again, just being Wonder Woman, happy. The silhouettes, he just had fun drawing it. The concrete in the background, the statues, I think were a great little bit of embellishment,
yeah,
and just the way that she's using the whip to do everything
yeah. Was
was
this
really.
done for a collected edition?
I believe so. I think it's a pinup that's done. It's in the omnibus, I believe. I don't know
Okay,
where it first appeared, but
okay, beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah,
just stunning.
and I just love that persona esque shot of Hippolyta and Diana
Yeah.
there in that. Oh, it's beautiful.
Well, and it really draws out the Greek of the character.
Yeah,
She has he is really good. I mean, being a person, George was a person of color, being Latino. It was important for him to show who these people were. And so, if you look at the different races that he draws, be it Cyborg, be it Wonder Woman, or everything, he draws out those racial embellishments that some other people just draw stock Caucasian faces, and he
yeah,
he didn't do that. So I
no,
think that's wonderful. The next images, I believe, are going to be from Future's End, where George played with my guy. He played with the Hulk. Gave us this Maestro character that is just nasty, a tyrant in the future, and does some time traveling with Bruce. And so, super fun story. I love again the sinew that he draws in these people. If you, this George got had a little fun with this. If you look in the background on a lot of these images where Maestro is just chilling, the man had a harem in the background. There was some fucking going on. And George doesn't shy away from that. And he manages to work this into a major Marvel event. And you just know that what Maestro's been doing. So yeah, he just lays it out. And but even from that, like look how just exquisite the silk is. I mean, just
yeah,
those lines, like the man's line would not quit.
yeah. You may have heard once in a while Steve and I make reference to the Marvel app, the Marvel Tops app,
Yeah.
and there are some characters that the Marvel Tops app inexplicably has a Jones for. They just love him. One is Armor, and another is Maestro. There are
Yeah.
like at least like 5 or 6 Maestro cards for some reason.
Okay.
Loves
Minimum,
Maestro.
minimum, minimum.
Minimum. Yeah. Loves
Maestro should be in the
The
Marvel top. Obviously,
primal and
with
the
his
normal
background, he's
series.
top. George Perez is, again, singular for my love of comics, but you know, there is something about a redhead with curly hair that just does it for me, and that is 100% because of George Perez. I 95% homo, but you give me this woman walking up and I will walk away with her. Just beautiful, and just the attitude that he drew into her is stunning. And again, the backdrop with you have Beast and She-Hulk in there. Tiger's leg is in the background. Black Panther's leg is in the background. He told you a whole story.
Yeah.
And them hips though.
Yeah. I don't think we have that many more, do we? Okay, so this is just the cover of the recent JLA Avengers collection, the limited edition of 7,000 that came out because they wanted to ensure that George got to see this in his lifetime. And this reprints the JLA Avengers miniseries that took place. But one big regret was not getting the Absolute edition because, oh my God, that is an incredible amount of back matter in that. And one thing that should be said about JLA Avengers is this was actually his second stab at it.
Yeah.
There was a JLA Avengers book that was planned for 1981-82. And unfortunately, this was a period where DC and Marvel just couldn't come to an agreement on certain legal aspects of the book. And it was shelved after George, I believe, drew 12 full pages and 20 at least 20 pages of thumbnails. He got pretty far in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you it never came to pass, but later on with Kurt, his partner on Avengers, got to tell this story. And there's wonderful moments in that of the JLA Avengers. You have one of my favorite moments is a Wanda moment where they're on the DC universe and they just make a comment. The air, just the air is better in the
Yeah.
DC universe. Just a little aside that people don't realize that they offer Hawkeye membership in the JLA. And he briefly accepts. Yeah, there's a lot of cool moments. I mean, a lot of uh, the big moments. Superman holding Cap's shield and Thor's hammer, that was the cover of the 4th issue. I think and apparently that was like one of the only times George got mad because he sold that original art for apparently a ridiculous amount of money, and Marvel lost the art temporarily. And people were saying that was the only time they ever saw George mad. Is that it? There's no others there, Steve? Oh, okay. And you mentioned about we are an LGBTQ podcast, and George. This is something I don't think was well known. That George was very accommodating to his gay fans,
Yeah.
and would very often provide pictures, particularly of the Titans shirtless for his gay male fans. I'm sure some women enjoyed that too, but. Wow. Yeah, toast to you there, George. And is there one more, I think?
Well, I don't think I have any more images, but I do have a couple pictures here that I think Caleb.
Oh, okay, because I just wanted to
well.
mention that there was with the most recent season of Teen Titans Go, George and Marv became characters.
Yeah.
In 2 of the episodes. And,
okay.
And that was there's a nice coda on the Titans arc with them in a sense. Because God knows how much longer we have with Marv too. These are men in their 70s, and it's scary. But just wanted to show that there was an example of him extending his notoriety outside of comic books in that really clever way of becoming characters in the new Teen Titans cartoon.
Who is Troy?
Well, let me
I
see.
didn't know who Troy is.
Oh, and
It's
what
not.
else does Troy have?
Yeah, I want to see Troy's. I need to see
Yeah,
Troy's
and
art collection.
there was another image that I provided you, Steve, that I don't see up here. There was a book called Focus on George
Mm-hmm.
Perez, which was a Bible for me when I got back into comics, and it had
Yeah.
a list of all the appearances that he had and some of his early work. And it was worth mentioning that that was written by Andy Mangels, who's been a past guest and a very prominent LGBTQ voice in comics.
Well, let
And
me see.
was
Let me
also
see if
was
I can grab those two. I do want to. I did want to put up the Teen Titans Go image
there we
that you
go.
had
Yeah.
mentioned. That is pretty awesome there with George at the drawing desk and
Yeah.
Marv standing over him in very Teen Titans style.
Yeah.
Teen Titans Go style, I mean. And then here's the book that you just mentioned as
Yeah,
well.
and this was a really nice manner of incorporating most of the characters that George had worked on at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So you see there like things from Black Widow, which was which was had been set for Marvel premiere, ended up in Marvel Fanfare.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have Sword Quest is in there. A lot of the right above the Fantagraphic books is a character Phoenicia that's based on his wife Carol. Omac from a DC Comics Presents story. That was the only time he tackled them, but it is, through the book you do see some other stuff that's just wonderful. If you can track this book down, do. It's a really nice collection of interviews and profiles, and was the first checklist I worked from to get a lot of his work.
To that end, there's some other really great books, and Steve, you can throw those other pictures up there while I'm talking if you want to. Just to, I was able to meet George at C2E2 a few years ago. That is a capstone moment for me. That was the culmination of a lifetime of love, and it was after we had learned, some stuff that was going on with him, and I knew it was one of the only chances I was going to get. And this was just George all the time. He didn't know me from Adam. I just said, hey man, like one day as a kid, I found your book and it changed my life. And he wrapped his arms around me and hugged me like he'd known me forever.
Yeah,
And we said, and he had a line and he sat there and said, hey man, it's like, sit here and talk to me while I sign these and just hang out for a minute. So that moment means the world to me.
that's very cool.
So, but some other books similar to one that Bill was just talking about. Modern Masters did a version that spotlighted George Perez. This is volume 2 of it.
I
You see,
believe that's also written by Andy.
this is edited by Eric Nolan Wethington. I'm not
Okay, I
sure.
may be wrong.
It's a collection of things. So Andy may have worked on this. It has a great intro by Marv Wolfman, and then IDW puts out some really great stuff. Um, they put out a book called The Art of George Perez. It's called Desperado, and these two books. The reason I show these, really great cover. They do some really great work. Just randomly, I'm going to open up. We talked about some of the stuff that George did outside of Big Two comics. These spotlight a lot of that. You get gorgeous images of stuff that he's inked, the stuff that he's drawn. The back half of the IDW book really focuses on the stuff that he just inked as kind of a capstone to that. So if you want to know more about the stuff that doesn't get a lot of the limelight when it comes to George, check out these collections. Hunt these down because they're amazing. They're amazing educational tomes, and if they also give you some great insight to the man's life. And so that's the only way we can know him now. And so like those stay on my desk, just kind of right back here, so I can grab them and look at them at all times.
I also have to say I met George at a MegaCon, which was actually where I almost met Brian that year. And it's driving me crazy because I have a file where there's pictures of me with Neil Adams, with George, with Len Wein, and with Erwin Hasen, who was a Golden Age artist who created Wildcat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's driving me nuts that I can't find these pictures. So if you're on the old EOC forum or on LiveJournal and knew me for a while and have those pictures, please send them to me because I can't find them. They've got to be somewhere on a disc. But
The 3.5
at some point I'll find them.
floppy.
Yeah. Well, not that bad, but
I very, 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 very briefly met George when he was busy at Dragon Con, which,
Yep.
if you've ever attended Dragon Con, for those of you who have, comics are not exactly the big focus there. And in fact, their artist alley sometimes feels like this is where we figured we could put everybody, and some of y'all draw comics. It was very interesting because he didn't have much of a line for the time that he was there, but he was working on a lot of commissions, so it was just kind of like churning them out, which I think, for some artists who are at these cons, that might be more of a godsend, that they can actually spend enough time to really kick out these commissions, rather than having to sign a line of 500 people. But I just thought that was really interesting, because I was like, hey, who's that bald dude over there? He looks really familiar. And it's George Perez. Which was interesting. I think that was it might have been 2015, 2016.
yeah.
So, but yeah, no pictures.
Okay,
Didn't have anything
we
from his
are. Wow, we talked
Yep.
a lot about George, so this is just going to be a 2-hour episode, folks. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because we do have to talk about the film.
Yes, the film.
So, Steve, you are always our plot dude in regards to when we talk about these films. So, why don't you talk about the very basic plot of the new Doctor Strange MCU film?
So the very, very basic plot of this is following the events in Spider-Man No Way Home and the Disney Plus TV series WandaVision. Doctor Strange is plagued by nightmares, but the interesting thing is these nightmares may be more windows into the worlds of other versions of himself. And we're introduced to America Chavez, who Doctor Strange encounters fighting a strange multi-tentacled, one-eyed creature, very much like a Shumagorath. And a Shumagorath, which is not Shumagorath, but it is Shumagorath. Through the streets of New York, and finds that she's being tracked through the multiverse by some big bad. So he enlists the help of the Sorcerer Supreme, Wong, and tries to protect America from this big bad. And he also tries to elicit the help of the Scarlet Witch, and it turns out, she's very clear to say, she is that big bad. And throughout this film, basically, America and Doctor Strange are trying to escape the Scarlet Witch as best they can, and find a way to defeat her, or counteract her evil magic, which is very much from the Darkhold that she got a hold of at the end of WandaVision. So lots of really cool world hopping here, some amazing crazy cameos, blink and you miss them in some cases, and some very shocking ones, fan service kind of casting in others. It was directed by Sam Raimi, and this is probably the Raimiest Marvel movie that you've seen. If you have watched Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, the old early 2000s versions, this is less that and more Evil Dead in terms of the visuals, what he was able to sort of impart in this. So it's definitely a horror movie, which Marvel hasn't had one of those yet. True horror movie as part of the MCU. Yeah, very very interesting. So what did you guys think about this one?
Talk to the Wanda dude first.
Wanda dude, what did you think about the Scarlet Witch versus Doctor Strange movie?
I was highly entertained. I'll
Yes.
say that. I had fun with it. I thought it was great. So from the get go, especially America Chavez, like Roger noticed right off the bat. It's like, hey, she's wearing a pride pin. That's awesome. Like, because we don't see that very often, especially not in a movie like this. And just fell in love with that character, and watching them bounce back and forth. Now, I think they left it open ended. You said it. Wanda ends up being the big bad. Her motivations are are understandable. You have to really watch WandaVision, I think, to understand the full scope of why she is where she is and what the Darkhold is. But as somebody who's in love with the lore of Wanda, and I mean, I've got like, I collect art from Wanda. Wanda's my girl. It was great having that explained. It was great seeing that. It was great seeing her go through these emotional struggles. They didn't make her. She was doing bad things. There's no doubt about it. She was doing terrible, terrible bad things. But the gravity, the thing that Marvel does so well with these movies is they make they make you empathize with her. Like, okay, I get why she's doing what she's doing. The great thing for me, and I had this been another situation, it would have broke my heart, but it ends. I guess we're doing slight spoilers there. It ends in a way where we she's gone, but she's not gone. Yeah, like they're number one, it's comic book rules. So if you don't see a body, they're not dead. But also, it's the multiverse. There's other versions of her around. There's other versions of lots of people around, which was really cool to see. Like you get this moment where you see all of these figures, and I'm not going to say who it was. Go watch the movie. But they're just some classic iconic figures. But at the end of the day, this wasn't my favorite Marvel. No, it's higher than others. But it was entertaining. I had fun with it. I think Cumberbatch did a great job with it. There were moments that were really funny. Uh, Multiversal time hopping means that the plot doesn't really matter because they can do whatever they want to, and so I think that's a narrative crutch. But it's fun. I see where they're going with it. I had a good time, and at the end of the day, look, super super fun movie, super cool movie. You got to see a lot of people. You got to see a lot of characters. I got to go on a date night with my husband and watch a movie. That was fun. That's all I want in life. I didn't get a hot dog. I should have, but was not. I did not leave disappointed. We had a great time.
I don't know. Watch those movie theater hot dogs. Sometimes they're a little iffy. How long have they been rotating on that thing?
Facts, valid point.
I had 2 hot dogs.
So you had my hot dog.
There you go.
It was okay.
I've wanted to give you my.
All right. I wasn't as enthusiastic about the film mainly because of the Wanda content. Uh, Not saying her action, not talking about her actions, but if you didn't see WandaVision, they didn't give you enough. They just didn't give you enough. They needed to, they could have done it very economically and simple by basically recapping what happened. But if you're going into that not knowing the character at all, or only knowing the character from the Avengers films, uh, there's big holes there. There's a really, really big holes there, and
I
they
think
could have done that.
a similar argument can be made if you haven't seen What If. I think you need to have seen What If.
Yeah.
But I
not
didn't
not
think
not
I didn't think the what if element was as crucial to the storyline as
as
Wanda's
yeah,
was.
no, 1,000%
It
true.
helped.
I
I
agree
mean,
wholeheartedly.
it definitely helped,
Yeah,
but that felt more like icing on the cake, with the inclusion of a character with the initial CC in their identity and some other people. And the version of the Illuminati that we saw was I just that was one moment when I went to see it. I saw it with 2 other people in the movie theater, and that's one of those moments where I really do wish um, that we were well past the pandemic. Because hey, I'm not going to put my life on the line for a film, but I do. Those are times like that I do miss being in a crowd to see elements like that, and the one particular theme being played. That I was like
yeah.
literally like doing a happy clappy when that happened.
I was
Uh,
in a crowd and the place erupted. Like
mhm,
there was a standing ovation. And there's only been like
yeah,
2 other movies I've ever been in. One of them was another Marvel movie where
yeah.
you got that. But like people, like I whistled. It was a thing.
Right. So I thought the cast was fine. Zacatil Gomez, is that the way you pronounce her first name? I'm not sure. I thought she was wonderful as America Chavez, and that's doing its job because I've read maybe 2 comics with her in it. So I'm interested in this character now. I knew the basic story, because I have Wiki, but that made me interested in that character. Performances were all fine, but I thought with the Wanda elements in particular, and I did also think that the end of the 616 Wanda, let's just put it that way, the end of her arc, there could have been a bit more heroism, bit more sense of heroism to it, because the character did change after something was told to her at that point, and I thought that was a very effective moment, and I thought they could have gelled that a little more effectively. Um, and but I do. We kind of do need a break from the multiverse films at this
Yeah.
point. Let's put the brakes on that. Apparently, the Flash film is steeped in this as well.
Yeah.
Apparently, the test screening that they had was really well received, and they basically greenlit a Supergirl film just from that. So that's encouraging to hear. But we got a little space between that with some comic book films.
Yeah, they
Uh,
they
yeah,
need to do something because they don't have Ezra Miller in their pocket. They
yeah,
need to do something else with that. But
yeah.
so yeah, I agree with you because again, the multiversal thing is not. Again, I said it earlier. I think that's a crutch. It's
It could
you
become a crutch. It's been well handled so
yeah.
far, but
When we walked out of the theater though, I had to explain to Roger. I had to give some backdrop to the convergence, like what that meant, because that plays a part here. And we had like I had to go. This was the most Hickman film of any of the films that we've seen, and you get a taste of what might come to pass with that. And I do think this is where again, as a huge Wanda fan, you see other versions of Wanda in this. So we don't know what's going on with that. But I think that this gives you the opportunity, and because we know some behind the scenes stuff too, with rights coming from Fox back to Marvel and this, that, and the other. I do think that they're going to Secret Wars. I think we're going to get something akin to that. I think we're going to get a convergence, and the Hickman thing where they can bring in characters like Miles Morales. They can bring in characters from that the Fox characters. It's a really good mechanism to do it if they
yeah,
choose to go that way. It's worked in
uh,
the comics for 20 years.
yeah. With the leader of the first family, let's put it that way. If he's the guy, I'm okay with it.
A 1,000%,
I'm very okay with it.
one thousand
Very
percent.
okay with it. I do not understand some of the criticisms. We're trying not to spoil here, folks, but I was very okay with it. If that comes to pass. Uh,
I love it.
So we have a couple comments here.
yeah.
John mentions Scarlet Witch was serving a real mean look, and I'm still here for it. Also, hello, the good shirtless doctor having nightmares at the start of film. Wolf, kind of. What kind of wolf, I guess. And just some rando. Can we just get a good Doom on screen already? And
That'd be nice.
yeah,
That'd be nice.
yeah, that would be nice. And I think, and this is
Actually,
again.
God's honest truth, the best Doom so far has been in that shitty Roger Corman film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there you go. You get a comics accurate Doom
That's
there,
actually
and everyone
good
else
Doom.
tries to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody tries to make
Yeah.
it edgy or cool,
But, yeah.
or like, oh, we don't want him to be a total
I
melodramatic
want a Doctor
buffoon.
Doom that gives kids
It's like-
nightmares. I don't want.
Yeah, Doctor Doom.
actor.
Yeah.
They cast
Ridiculous.
my fan cast to be Doom. The person I thought would make the best Doom whatsoever is Moon Knight. So,
Yeah, well, there you go.
I think Oscar Isaac would make a
He
great.
could be both. I mean, he's also Apocalypse.
See, there's
so-
like the whole. They could go like a number of ways. Like the one treatment of Doom I love is that there's nothing wrong with his face but a tiny scar, and he freaks the fuck out and does that. So you could get like a very conventional, good-looking actor
Yeah,
to do it. I have to think about that because Doom's not a particular favorite character of mine, though. Like he's been a no. I mean, it's okay, but
Yeah.
he's not like I would say like not one that I go into like I don't know. It's not a go-to favorite villain. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he's not really one of mine either. Just Moreno also mentions the dude who played Roose Bolton on Game of Thrones would make an awesome Doom. I mean, I'm sure there are some good. I can't remember who that actor is, but I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think there are some options there. or you could just do it completely masked, and it doesn't really matter who physically embodies Doom, but just getting the right voice would kind of help out too. But
could be.
There it has
type
been
of situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and with Multiverse of Madness, which, by the way, in my take on it, this was Marvel's Mother's Day movie. One, it came out right before Mother's Day, and two, Mom, come on, and also three, it's Scarlet Witch. This movie's about her being a mom, so it's just it is the Mother's Day movie. Kind of interesting that they've got one now for that holiday, because most people don't make a horror superhero sci-fi movie.
I was also surprised about this should have been an R. It's like, these people who say that, do you know that there's been a cottage industry of horror films that are rated PG-13 specifically for teenage girls, and those things show images far more graphic than anything we got. Just stop being a baby.
Yeah, there was nothing terribly graphic in this one. It's just the designs. The designs were very much a Sam Raimi design. Zombie Strange was very much a Evil Dead kind of Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness, less Evil Dead original and Evil Dead remake, more the goofy ones. Which I mean that's Sam Raimi in a nutshell, sort of like horror and goofiness smushed together. The dark spirits and all that.
He got to make the movie. He got to make the movie he wanted to make with this. I feel like they went Sam Raimi went and said, "Hey, I'm not going to do this unless I can make it 100% Sam Raimi." And they were like, "Actually, can you just make it 110% Sam Raimi?" And he just freaking ran with it because it was ridiculous. It was great.
Yeah.
In terms of the first stinger, that gave me hope for like a totally dick code out third film.
Yeah,
that gave me hope.
That would be.
And I like the casting as well. As well. And for the second stinger, I imagine we're going to see Popcorn Papa again somehow.
Well,
maybe the 616 version of him.
the extra joke with that is that one, it's of course it's Bruce Campbell, but then also it was his hand, the one from Evil Dead that went crazy and tried to kill him. So. There you go. Kind of like call back to that as well. Thanks, Sam. But yeah, and there are a couple other comments here that would be extra spoilery, so we're probably not going to mention that. But yeah, I think that there's some interesting things that they could do with this. Some interesting items and plots that they bring up. Some potential big events that they bring up too. I mean, this could be more like Mephisto. Speculation here, or it could be the possible introduction of Doctor Doom,
and Mephisto would be a very nice alignment with what's going on where Spider-Man was left at the end of his
Yep, exactly. So
and you're getting the Midnight Suns too. So
exactly. Yep. At some point, we need dates on these things.
We've had the Midnight Suns. They're just they're just gonna retcon.
We need the new Blade. We need that new Blade movie dated. Yeah. So
we've had an MCU Hellstrom. We've had an MCU Ghost Rider.
That the Hellstrom is unrelated. I thought.
No, that was MCU. That was Marvel Television.
It hasn't been completely.
They don't have the rights yet. It's still stuck with Hulu. Imagine that they're gonna do like Marvel Legacy and just erase the parts they don't like. I'm sorry, you're stuck with if you're stuck with a dud like Inhumans, work with it.
Yeah,
seriously. There was a lot of good stuff that came. It was an uneven show, but there was a lot of good stuff that came out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that could work cinematically. So if this is what you had. Don't say the whole thing is, you have a mechanism through this retcons to kind of do something with it. But, I think what this film, and particularly the film before it, shows that there are elements that people love from what was an MCU and play with it. Be smart about it. Just because you were, just as things came out and didn't connect with the public. I just don't want a constant reshuffling of stuff that this mattered and this didn't. If you
I don't
bannered
think
it MCU, then that's the way it is, and you're stuck with it, and work from it, and something good will come out of it.
I don't think you're going to get that. I mean, you saw elements of that not only in this film, but in the She-Hulk preview that just came out. You see Blonsky. You see elements of all of that play in. So I think they're going to do just that. I think they're saying, no, we did this. It worked for some people. I mean, I loved Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought it was fantastic. There are elements of, I mean, you mentioned them, but
I hated Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in space. I hated that.
Well, I didn't like that.
Hated it. I
There were parts
hated
of
it. Oh my God, I hated turning into that. Oh,
but also the Inhumans. There were elements about the Inhumans. I mean, the show was a whiff, yeah, but there were elements that worked really well. There was some great casting, and it's fun stuff. So I think they're doing that. I think.
And this film kind of showed you they could have done something different.
Yep.
Also with what we got, and that
it's the director. I mean, it's not the actor. I mean, there have been no bad castings. There's been no bad castings here.
Not in this film. No.
Not in this film. Not in this film.
Yeah. So I mean, it allows Marvel to basically say everything is canon because it could potentially exist out there in the multiverse. So we can bring in these characters, or at least versions of these characters. This whole show maybe has nothing to do with what happened in the 616 version of things. But hey, guess what? These characters exist here too. So we're just gonna wipe away everything that they were doing on that TV series. But hey, guess what? There's
I want to see that.
gang here
Rather
we're gonna
than
bring
be
back.
stuck with it. I'd rather them be stuck with it and be smart about things. That's cheap. That's a cheap way out.
I don't think they're going to keep as much.
It's cheap.
I don't think so.
Cloak and Daggers, elements of that were dud. Work with it.
I mean, I love Cloak and Dagger. I loved Runaways. I doubt that I'll be seeing much in the MCU.
But I would rather them.
The way it is.
It's not like you can retcon my life. I'd like different parts of it. It turned out differently. But I don't get to do that. So, all right, let's. We're running really late, but I had so much fun going through George's art tonight. I really, we don't do things like that often. And maybe we can
which is a good a
little more celebratory and not not more
less
of a
like
eulogy.
Let's wait for
But we did each have a comic book we want to talk about. We'll probably speed through this and speed through our Wolves of the Week, but let's get started. Steve, tell us about a comic that you're enjoying.
I'm really enjoying Count Crowley. This is the second volume, Amateur Midnight Monster Hunter. This is the follow-up to Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter from a couple years ago. This is written by David Dasmalkian, who you may recognize that name as starring as Polka Dot Man most recently in last year's Suicide Squad movie. But also he's appeared in the CW Arrowverse as Abracadabra and several other shows that you might recognize him from as well. But he is also a massive comic nerd and clearly a fan of the old sort of midnight movie host element that used to exist in on independent television back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s into probably the early 90s before everything got consolidated and there weren't independent TV stations anymore and all that stuff. But it's such a great series. In it, it's an alcoholic. In the first book, she's set up as taking over sort of the former host of this midnight movie series, who seems to have disappeared. Well, it turns out that he was actually a true monster hunter and basically left everything for her to pick up his mantle. And with her alcoholism, with all of her personal problems, she was not really ready for it, but then, of course, was forced into it. Now, in second volume, we get to see that it didn't just end there, that there's a lot more that's going on with an evil vampiric council that's been trying to take over America and the world, of course, and people like her, predecessor were some of the people who were trying to stop that, and now it's up to her. In the first and second issue, she's working to at first take out a violent meth-powered werewolf, but also trying to figure out how she's going to get what she needs to protect herself, and also become a much better monster hunter, seeing as how she doesn't really want to, but she knows she has to at this point. She knows that she's going to be good at it. But this is a great book. It's 2 of 4. There are 4 issues for this one. There are 4 issues for the original series. You can get in trade as well. It's put out by Dark Horse. Pick it up. That's a lot of fun.
All right.
Also, Lucas Kettner on art. Sorry.
Okay. Over to Caleb. Caleb, tell us about a book you're reading that you're enjoying.
Well, we've talked about several characters that George Perez played a part in. One being Thor, one being the Hulk, and some of the stuff. So I thought I'd talk about a book that plays with both of those characters. There is a new book out. I think it's about 2 weeks old now. It's written by Donny Cates, art by Martin Coccolo. Sorry. Matt Wilson does the colors and Joe Spino does letters. And that is none other than Hulk versus Thor, Banner of War. Donny Cates is basically Mr. Marvel right now. The dude is just writing everything. He's currently the head scribe on Thor and the head scribe on Hulk. If you remember back in the last really amazing chapter of the Hulk, Immortal Hulk, something happened in a town in Texas, and lots of people died. It was very bad, and Hulk is on the run from that. So essentially, in the Hulk book, Banner's psyche is running the Hulk's body like it's a giant mech. And they have blasted off into space, and they're doing some dimension hopping. Thor has gone through a whole lot of stuff. His dad just kicked the bucket, but now lives in a hammer and is talking to him. That's weird, but we're going to see where that goes. But in this book, Thor needs some therapy and to punch some things. So he catches wind that Banner, who's wanted for what happened in El Paso, is dimension hopping and is coming to a dimension near you. So he confronts Banner, and there's just it's just a giant, big knockdown, drag out Hulk versus Thor fight, including an amazing scene where Thor lays his hammer on Hulk, lays Mjolnir there, which Odin's voice is shit talking the Hulk the whole time. That's funny. But the Hulk just does a push up and rips out his stomach, and just tells Thor, "Hey, pick up your hammer. We got business to finish." It's awesome. I'm actually liking this way better than I'm liking the actual Hulk book. I'm not a huge fan of that right now. It's fun. It's fine. It's just not for me. I'm curious to go other places, but pick up this and then pick up the subsequent issues in Thor and Hulk where this finishes and finalizes. They're also, without spoiling anything, I mentioned this phrase earlier, "We will have words with thee" was one of my favorite lines from a George Perez Kurt Busiek book, and that line is in this book, and so that's pretty cool. So
just a very quick question. Is that in a different format than the regular comics? Is that almost like in the DC Black Label format? It looked bigger.
No, it's regular size.
It's regular size. Okay, for some reason it looked bigger. Okay.
This is standard size, but it's a one shot. It's Banner of War Part 1 Alpha. But no, it's regular comic size. They didn't do the larger size, but I mean, you get some really great art.
Okay, cool. For the book I want to talk about, it may be a surprise if you've listened to the show before and you know that I have referred to Future State as La Bamba, and it stinks. But I've kept with the black and white series Future State Gotham, which plays upon some of the themes from that event. In the back, there are short 8-page stories, very reminiscent of Batman Black and White. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if these were originally prepared for the Batman Black and White project. There is an 8-page story that is written and drawn by Jamal Campbell, named "The Man Who Flies," which is also the title of a particular short Batman origin story that deals with Nightwing. And it takes you through Dick's entire history in the space of 8 pages. What led to his becoming Bruce Wayne's ward and Batman's partner, his relationship with the other members of the Batman family, his loves that he's encountered, like Starfire and Barbara Gordon, his failures, you know, losing to Deathstroke and some other issues, the the problems with Gotham, the influence of Superman on his life. This is all in 8 pages, and it's beautifully illustrated. If you can see that here, and
Hmm.
it's like the 3.99 entry fee is worth it just for this one shot of the Batman family having movie night. you know and it's just a wonderful 8-page story. It immediately launched into my top 5 Dick Grayson stories. The Nightwing book right now is firing on all cylinders. Things are really good for Dick, and this story I think is going to go down as one of the quintessential stories. Nothing to do with Future State apart from it being in black and white. This came out last month. It's 3.99. 3.99 is a lot to ask for 8 pages, but it is worth, as I said, the entry fee. So
I mean, there's also ads for other books that might also be very good.
yeah, okay, yeah,
In
sure.
addition to those 8 pages.
I'm not sure if I think they just you know what, they got you there. The only ads are in the interior covers.
Oh
The rest of
wow,
the book
huh.
is all content. So
Wow, that's
Yeah.
good.
gotcha,
That's
smart
good.
ass. All
We're
right,
we're
so
we're killing Steve with our puns tonight. By the way,
yeah.
Steve's facial
Hmm.
expressions are great.
Yeah, so we still want to try to keep this close to 2 hours, and we do have another segment, the Wolves of the Week. We'll go through this very quickly, of the things that we want to signify to you that you should enjoy. But we also should mention some of the Eisner nominations that came out today. So, Caleb, do
Yep.
you want to take care of that? Because they do
Yeah,
involve friends
sure.
of the show.
I'm really happy to announce that our good friend, and I mean this not just as hey we talked to him that one time, but genuinely good friend, Zach Crusay. His book Mysterious Travelers, Steve Ditko and the Search for New Liberal Identity, is nominated for an Eisner.
Excuse
That's huge. This has been a labor of love and a lifelong obsession, and I mean that in the best kind of ways for Zach. We know this because
Hmm.
I texted him as soon as I saw it. And I'm like, dude, this is amazing. This is fantastic. I really hope it wins. I've read this thing cover to cover. It is brilliant. Zach is brilliant. This is obviously in the academic category, so this gets a lot of love. Congratulations, Zach, and whether you win or not, but man, I'm hoping you win. But whether you win or not, it's huge. Yeah, this is some work. So it's pretty
Hmm.
amazing.
And if people want to check our feed and find our past interview with Zach about that book, please do. Uh, this is a really favorite show of mine. I love talking about Ditko's work with him. All right, so we're on to the woofs of the week in the bear community. If you find a fella attractive, you woof at him, and we do something similar here. We woof at a film or TV program or a comic book or a child initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Kids in the Hall is back on Amazon Prime. That's my wolf.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for keeping it short. I appreciate that. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
I'm going to bring some tension. I just waxed poetic about Zach's book, and I hope it wins. One of Zach's competitors is The Life and Comics of Howard Cruz, Taking Risks in the Surface of Truth by Andrew J. Kunka. Also an amazing book, also competing in that academic category. Um, I love Howard Cruz. Stuck Rubber Baby is quintessential reading for me. So pick this up and read it. I'm going to spend, I have not actually read this yet. I'm looking forward to it. So come Saturday, my ass is going to get planted in a hammock and I'm going to read it.
Okay. My wolf of the week goes out to Under the Banner of Heaven, which is a mini series on FX on Hulu with Andrew Garfield and Sam Worthington and some other excellent actors, which details a true crime in the 1980s that involved uh, the Mormon Church. And throughout the storyline, it is also interspersed with historical moments of the Mormon faith, and it kind of knocks me out about how violent that history is. Really excellent, excellent performances. It's a bit intense. So if you're expecting like a like a zany romp, forget it. It's a very intense show, and the episodes are as long as they want to take. So most of them are over an hour. They're on number 5, I think, of 8 or 9. So you can search that out. But really excellent, well done series under the banner of heaven on FX on Hulu. That's my Wolf of the Week.
And that's based off of I think it's I don't know if you've read it, but John Krakauer's Under the Banner of Heaven. I know it was inspired by the book, but is it very similar to what happens? Because that was more of like a true crime.
Yeah, no, they do that, but it also ties in to aesthetically to things that are happening today.
Okay.
So with deplorables, let's put it that way. So it's a very well done show. So I'm sorry, I'm really petering out with the energy, and I gotta get some sleep. I'm seeing the Who for my 25th time tomorrow night, and I had a long day. So I'm very sorry about petering out, but we stuck it out for 2 hours. 2 hours and 25 minutes, and we got those segments in short, and I really appreciate you guys, and I love talking with you guys tonight. And again, Caleb, congratulations, and hope the next few weeks go as smoothly as they can for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
All right. So again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. Oh, you can hear I got that my Kathleen Turner voice is coming. So again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, please